Hello there. Welcome back to Charles Circle, and welcome back to Captain of Industry. Last time, we wrapped up the early game by upgrading our research labs, which we supplied, or will very shortly supply, with lab equipment produced here in this small factory that also contains a revamped maintenance setup and more predictably produced vehicle parts, all from the same two key ingredients: electronics and mechanical parts. We also took care of a few more odds and ends around the base, reinforcing various productions and letting buffers fill up so that we can hit the ground running today, now that we can unlock the next phase of development. Having built Research Lab 1 level labs in our base allows us to research all of the next couple dozen technologies until we will, again in the future, be hard stopped by the need to move to Research Lab 2. But there's quite a bit to do between now and then. That's exactly how we're going to start today's session off. So let's Unity build real quick this drop off and let our trucks bring our lab equipment over and start researching. What are we going to start researching? Well, there's a few directions we could go here, right? First, we've been talking a lot about steel production and using that sort of impending transition from iron to steel as a justification for skimping on expanding our iron production. That's caused us some short-term pain. I still think it's worth it, but it has caused us some short-term pain, and so it'd be nice to get that resolved relatively quickly, right? Second, I've also mentioned the refinery that we'll be able to build once we unlock advanced diesel. That will allow us to get a lot more diesel and other byproducts we can use for fuel out of the same amount of oil. So it's a significant upgrade to the efficiency of what we get out of our oil production. And finally, this power generation 2 technology is a step change in how we supply power to our base. It's far more efficient than burning diesel. And we're going to start with power generation, followed by steel, and in fact all the way through construction 3 for reasons I'll explain in a moment. And then we'll get to the refinery. There's a few reasons for that. One, steel production, the refinery, and all the supporting infrastructure for those two builds is going to increase our power drain, and I'm not fully convinced that we have enough power generation right now to comfortably build those two without having to expand along the way anyways. Two, even if we do have enough, we're currently, as we've mentioned a couple times, very inefficiently burning diesel directly in these diesel generators. Moving off of this will also, by definition, improve our oil setup because we won't be running down our diesel production at as high of a rate. And then finally, the refinery build that we want to do will also benefit from a number of other technologies that it would be nice to research along the way before we get to it. The most practical of which is Pipe 2, because then we can run 200 resources per minute through our pipes instead of the 60 that we've already run into as an issue over here for throughput, requiring us to double our production in our very basic setup. So that alone, I think, would justify delaying the technology, but there's quite a few others along the way that would be helpful. The cargo depot will allow us to bring in oil from the world map using a cargo ship, which will free us from being stuck to this very small and rapidly evaporating oil patch. So we're going to have to get to that before we run out of this. We'll slow this pace of usage, though, again, by moving off of diesel for power. So that's the rationale. That's the thought process. But we are going to get to all of it in relatively short order because all three of those things are important and powerful. So, while it's researching, let's talk about what we're about to unlock, right? This is going to be a very different way of thinking about power. In Captain of Industry, you actually have to build a turbine system. That turbine system supplies steam made in a boiler to a high-pressure turbine, which then converts that steam into mechanical power and byproduct steam, lower pressure. That mechanical power is turned by way of a power generator, which harnesses that rotational mechanical energy and turns it into electricity, which we then can use to power our base. And there's a number of ways to generate steam, and in the future, we'll get more power per unit of steam generated as well. But to start, we're really just looking at burning coal in a boiler to turn water 1-to-1 into steam and some exhaust on the side, right? So, steam is turned into mechanical energy to spin these generators, right? But it does produce this steam low output. We can totally just vent it off like exhaust. No pollution compared to exhaust, which is nice. But in the actually deceptively near future, we're going to get this water recovery technology, particularly considering I said we wanted to go all the way through construction 3 here in short order anyway. So let's go ahead and add that to the queue. This is super helpful because you'll see that you're getting back 50% of the water then that you put into the system. That's super helpful because this is a lot of water. This is a lot of water. This is one groundwater pump operating at max power, 48, right? If we come back to our groundwater pump, that's 48 water per minute. So it requires its own dedicated groundwater pump, and we have to make sure that we're not burning through the groundwater reservoir as a result. But we can cut that in half by simply recycling that steam back into water. Now, we don't have it right away, and we don't need to wait to build it, but we should build with that in mind. So we'll leave space for it. Okay. So let's talk about maybe where we should be putting this power. Now, I said it requires water. And so similar to our farming conversation, right? We have 2, I think, locations that you could reasonably be looking at for water adjacency. And eventually, when we get to desalination, the shoreline is also an option. That said, the initial desalination technology is not super efficient, and it takes coal. So while we still have, underutilized, let's call it, groundwater facilities, I think it would be nice to keep our starter turbine, so to speak, based off of our groundwater setup. How's this reservoir doing? Despite our increased consumption through farming and our settlement, we're still not even using all of the water that is regenerating when, over time, rainwater, etc., recharges the reservoir. So I think we're okay if we wanted to build it near this reservoir to start. The trade-off over here would be, well, we also kind of want to use this in the future to continue expanding our farming setup, something we talked about, 2 episodes now, right? Ago. So it would be kind of nice, maybe, to start making use of this reservoir, wouldn't it? And in fact, this reservoir is near coal, which is what we're going to be burning in pretty high volumes in order to create that steam, right? I would even build it like here if this ground were already flat, but it's not. So maybe the next best thing we could do would be something like over here. That's close enough to the water that if we put a groundwater pump here, we could send a pipe over here maybe. And this is relatively close for coal. We're running most of the coal out this way anyways, right? So maybe that's where we'll sketch that out. Come back to it in a moment. very close to unlocking it. The other thing we're going to have to do is probably upgrade our coal mining situation. Right now, the simplest upgrade is going to be adding trucks, because these guys aren't actually working 24/7. And actually, this is full up. Maybe we can delay that for a moment, but I have a feeling we're going to need to do that. Okay. Oh yeah, now we're going to learn about crisis management. Thank you, game. Okay, let's sketch out the power plant. And this one probably won't require a time lapse because it's actually just very straightforward. Although I will rearrange things. Like I said, boiler. Eventually we'll have other recipes. Right now, it's just coal. Steam comes out. We make 48 is the max throughput of this boiler. Well, what takes the steam? It's this high pressure turbine. This high pressure turbine takes 24. So we can do 2 of these for every boiler, right? So let's set 2 of them down here, and you'll see this is all on a single shaft, right? This starts rotating, and that will pass through to these power generators. See, again, you have to actually match them up. A power generator takes 3 of the mechanical power that is being produced here, and each one of these produces 6 mechanical power, meaning you can do 2 per high pressure turbine, and we have 2 of those. So we'll extend this even further. And then this just provides electricity to the grid. There's no wires or anything in this game, which I actually like. I suppose there's always a trade-off between realism and fun. And I like that this is the side of the fence that they came down on. I don't generally find power cables super fun in these types of games, so I like that choice personally. Okay. So, roughly speaking, this is kind of all we need, right? And this setup should produce 2 megawatts times 4, 8 megawatts, which is approximately twice our current max capacity, which we are not even reaching or requiring on a regular basis. This will be enough for a little while. The last thing that we're going to want to do, last thing we haven't built yet, is a flywheel. That's a big fella. What does he do? Well, let's talk about the 30-second version of this. Is basically, our demand for power is variable. It fluctuates, right? Based on which machines are on and running in any given moment. It's spiky. Now, I told you early on that our diesel generators handle that by simply burning only the diesel that they need to on demand. And so you can see here that our production and our consumption are always 1-to-1, pretty much, right? That's the whole purpose of, or that's rather how diesel generators handle that. And that is convenient. But like we said, it's not super efficient. These turbines are super efficient, but they have a trade-off too. They take a little while to spin up or spin down according to demand. And so if you want to be super safe, basically, what this means is you have all of your, by default, you have all of your turbines running at max capacity continuously, which is wasteful, right? If we were to have both of these on right away, we would be generating more than twice as much power as we need, but burning all of that coal and water regardless, right? So is there a way to balance that? And that is where this auto balancing function and the flywheel come in, right? So the auto balancing function turns turbines off and on to try to match that fluctuating demand. But that on-off process for these turbines takes a little while. It has to ramp up and it has to ramp down. And the speed at which it can do that is nowhere near the speed that our fluctuation of power happens at. And so you need a battery, right? In order to smooth those ramp up and ramp down periods, so that if we are ramping up, not quite generating as much electricity as we need, we can have the battery discharge to fill in those gaps. And as we are ramping down, any excess power can then recharge that battery, help smooth that curve, right? So what is a battery for mechanical power? Well, that's a physical battery. It's a flywheel. It spins. And so when we have more electricity in here, or more spinning basically than we need, more mechanical rotational energy than is required to turn into electricity to match our needs, this flywheel will spin, and it'll just keep spinning. It's continuously in motion until our turbines are not producing enough mechanical energy to meet that electrical need, and then it will discharge. It's kind of a neat system, right? The last thing I'll say is, what I tend to do, this auto balance system, it can get like over correlated. It's hard to explain exactly what it looks like. You'll notice it by experimentation. But what I tend to do is I tend to leave whatever I think my base load is. You know, what am I always going to need at least as much as, right? I try to leave one of those just continuously on. Don't worry about ramping up or down, just always produce that much. And that really narrows sort of the range of up and down required for the turbine to be adjusting. So what I tend to do is I'll leave it off here, for example. We only have 2 to choose from, so we're gonna have to be okay with producing 4 continuously. I'm fine with that. It's a little wasteful now, but it won't be for very long. But then the next one, I will auto balance. And this all takes care of itself. The only other thing is, if you find that despite your auto balancing calibration, that you're still getting like tiny little strips of red, little tiny blackouts, a machine here or there gives you a power symbol while it's adjusting up or down, slap down another flywheel. I cannot give you a perfect ratio. I'm not even sure that one exists necessarily. I think it's much simpler to just go, well, I'm getting blackouts. I'll just add another battery. It's really not that expensive, all things considered. So these are the pieces. The other thing I'll say is, let's think like future-proof here. I already mentioned that this currently waste byproduct, low pressure steam, can get recycled. So we need to leave room for that. But we also want then to be able to prioritize the water input from our recycled water rather than the groundwater. Because if we're making all this water, but still crowding it out with the water we're trying to save, by the way, coming out of the ground, then not only does that not achieve our savings, our water savings, it will back this whole system up, which is a problem. So we do need to be able to balance the water in that we want. The other thing that we probably want to be able to do is balance our steam source. Why do I say that? Well, we can also, in relatively short order, burn, for example, gas. Various byproducts from our soon-to-be-built refinery can be turned into power. And because, spoiler alert, the way that the refinery is built, it's really hard to balance all these outputs without backing something up. You're going to end up with byproducts that you either have to light on fire and just pollute up into the air, or you could turn into power. I like to do that. One, I just hate throwing things out. It's the right answer. You're gonna flare off some stuff, but I hate doing it. And 2, it does save us on coal, right? And this is, again, not to belabor the point, a finite resource. So we're gonna want balancers for both of those inputs. Other than that, though, it's just about building the rest of our inputs. And so I think I'm going to place a groundwater pump for here in the woods, which is not my favorite. We'll have to clear this all of trees, but it'll do for now. Something like that. And pipe it, naturally. because trucks may eventually need to drive through here, I suppose we will keep it elevated. Is that straight? I think so. Not that it matters too much, but why not be sure? And let's just use that for now. We'll adjust later as we need to. The good news, all of this is built on flat ground. We have to clear the trees, but we don't have to flatten afterwards. That's what the issue is over here, right? Otherwise, I would totally just build this like here. But I don't want to wait until we've cleared that land. So we will also, simply because like power generation is really important to be continuous. So we're definitely going to have a water buffer here. One, so that we have, backup water here, but two, so that there is a place for trucks in an absolute emergency to physically drop water off. Like, I think that's also going to be important here too. Okay. Then sort of working backwards from that, we said we want to be able to prioritize and prioritize on steam as well. So I think this is probably something like this, maybe? I think I like that. Move this back ever so slightly. I'm imagining that we'll build our water cooling tower over here, and then just pipe that water back around here and prioritize the input. Water here, potentially in the future, right? We'll have another one, a gas one, whatever, over this direction. You are going to need a nice little smokestack and a pipe to supply steam. In fact, I said I wouldn't do so much tweaking here, but let's go like this. And then this can come out over here. And these can go like this. The inputs and outputs on these turbines are elevated, which is just a tiny inconvenience. So for the meanwhile, like I said, we have to just vent this off, unfortunately. But because this is temporary, I also don't care where we put it. We'll just do this. You have the recipe already. That's wonderful. And yeah, I think this works. Not that we have the input to prioritize there. I think this is all good for now. So pause again and let her rip. Great. So we'll let that build in the background. And we can start thinking about, gosh, I guess steel, huh? I guess that's right. I do think, before we quickly move past that, I think adding trucks has got these two moving continuously. That's good. And this is full. I'm not going to build it yet. But eventually, like, our coal consumption is not going to decrease over time. Eventually, I think we will probably want to give this coal mine its own ore sorter. I'm just going to blueprint that there so that we remember that it's a thing we want to get around to eventually. Cool. So now, while this is researching, and while our power plant is building, let's think about steel. So steel Steel, you notice we're not getting another smelter. We're just getting this new building, oxygen furnace. So this oxygen furnace takes, molten iron, something we already know how to make from our iron mine. And it takes a new resource that we have not yet gotten the ability to create. That is oxygen. This is stored as a gas, goes through pipes. That creates molten steel, at a 1-to-2 ratio. So we lose, this is important to remember, 2 iron rather equals 1 steel. So we need to remember that when we are comparing the efficiencies of recipes of iron plates versus steel plates. But that's how this works. A little bit of exhaust. But where do we get this oxygen? Another new building called the air separator, which takes nothing and turns it into oxygen and nitrogen. Nitrogen we can just pipe off for now. In the future, there are some marginally helpful uses for it, but quite frankly, it's missing good uses in the game right now. It used to have one other. I think it was required in the science, like lab equipment supplies chain at one point. I have a feeling in the future they'll add in a better use for it. If you're watching this episode into the future, maybe that's already happened. But then we take that molten steel, and it's a new building, right? It's the cooled caster, but it's basically just a metal caster again, except that it requires water to absorb, I guess, the heat of the molten steel. We make our steel plates. Okay. So, and let's take ourselves a nice little coal power plant reward. That means this is up and running, huh? Well, it's up, it's not running. Because, what did I forget? Well, it requires coal. Darn it. That's very silly. This is actually not my favorite. I kind of forgot that we would need to do this, which is not my best work. However, so be it. I think so. Okay, so why am I being weird about this? We need to get a coal input in here, right? Why don't I just bring it across like this? Why don't I just put this here? Well, this turbine can extend in either direction. In the future, we're going to get the ability to upgrade these in place and add something that uses this low pressure steam. And so we want to kind of leave these areas as expansion. And so putting coal in here is a little bit awkward, or more awkward. I've made it more awkward than it needs to be. I think the simplest way to do this, hey, look at that, is lifts. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. Is that the right height? Seems fine for now. Bring it to here. I'm going to put an input here, I suppose. And we'll call that good. I'm going to keep this so that we have basically, we can do the same quick input here, but with various gas products. That's why I want to leave space here and keep this nice and tight. Great, so definitely do that. This is coal, and in fact, we're going to have you tell me not if it's empty, but if it's low, because this is super important that we have power, right? If nothing else in the base gets coal but our power situation, that's fine. This has genuinely got to be our top priority. Okay. Important to have. Now that's done. So let's get back to steel again while this continues to go. So we said that the beginning of steel smelting is basically the same as iron, right? So we probably know what this needs to look like, right? It's a typical smelting setup like we had before, but we have this additional step of oxygen furnaces and cooled casters. So if I'm going to copy anything, just as a starting point, it might be this. This is roughly the number of buildings and whatnot that we're going to need. Just to sort of sketch it out, let's put it over here. Now, obviously, this is the copper version of things, but we still, as we switch over to iron, want to keep the same general logic, right? We still want to prioritize iron scrap in when we have it, but we still, of course, need to have iron ore. We similarly here need to switch this to the iron versions of things, but again, want to prioritize the scrap. Over here, though, is where things change a bit. So we'll clear this out for a moment, and we'll say this is where this oxygen furnace building needs to go, right? And if we look at it again, sorry, if we look at it again, it comes 24 out, right? Perfect, that's 1-to-1. We can actually just put this right in a row. And that means that we don't need to be splitting these out. So we can remove them all from our output. And then from here, we're gonna have to get that oxygen building down. We'll set it off to the side and just pipe across the oxygen. That's easy enough. And then we need that molten steel to go into these cooled casters, right? So we don't need this. This will be steel, which of course we don't have yet, but we are going to need that water input still for the cooled casters. They'll be roughly here. What's the ratio on that? So we're going to put out 12 molten steel, and we're going to take 1 molten steel. So for each of these rows, we're simply going to do 1 oxygen furnace followed by 1 cooled caster, outputting steel. That's nice and tidy. And in 2%, we'll be able to actually slap it down. Our power, it's going. Beautiful. And so you'll see, right? Idle due to auto balance. We don't need this one yet. It's there. It's still transferring the mechanical power through the turbine, which is good, but we don't need it yet. Reflected by these two, its corresponding power generator is not running. And the flywheel, our battery, right, being all the way up. So, tremendous. Let's do, as I said, in each row, an oxygen furnace. Roughly something like this. And you can see we have the exhaust. Because this is less than 30, right? We can do 60 in a smokestack, typically. Because this is 30, we could merge these, save ourselves a little bit of space. So why not? We're gonna need that air separator over here. So the air separator simply makes oxygen and brings it over here. I'll get a little tidier on the connections in a moment, but just so that we have it there. We do have to dispose of this nitrogen. If we don't, the oxygen backs up. Now, I didn't actually say this yet, right? But this air separator is capable, it makes 36, of supplying both 18 and 18, right? So this is a 1-to-2 as well. And then we need that cooled caster. Here-ish. Like so. It's actually pretty straightforward, isn't it? You go, you go, you go, and you go. Okay? The water, similarly, needs to go here. We can connect it up over here, which I'm doing because we need to get our little connectors a square away from each other. It's a little awkward, but it's fine. Oh, and we, as I mentioned, need to get rid of the excess nitrogen. Cool. If this works, I'm going to get a little bit overly optimizy, but that's it. I actually think this laid out decently well from the start. Of course it did, but I need every square. Sorry. I hope I'm getting better about that. All right, so the reason I just did half of this is let's just take this whole thing, flip it, right? Slap it right back down. Cool. That looks fine to me. We don't necessarily need to have a whole second water, but I'm fine with it. Am I fine with wasting this much space in the center, though? I don't think I am. How many tiles is this? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So I could take out 3 on either side. And do something like this. Bring this whole thing over. We're looking great. Very nice. Okay. Finally connect up these last outputs. And just like that, we've got ourselves what I would call a pretty hefty steel setup. That's great news. So, where do we put it? Well, what are our inputs? Water, coal, iron. What are our outputs? Steel, slag. Water and coal and iron are really the things that I think we're going to try to tether this to. And if I try to optimize that, I think really the thing we want to be thinking about is like, where is all this steel going to go, right? And the steel is going to go in here where currently iron is going, and a whole bunch of other places that we have yet to build, right? So I kind of wonder if we should simply place it down here. Is that right? Could be. It could be right. What would that look like? It's a little tight up against our settlement, huh? And as our food markets illustrate, along with our waste disposal, you know, these buildings are limited in where you can place them, and also need to have like easy access to the road and stuff. So the other thing we could do would be to place it more up here, right? And maybe that's more the play. It's next to iron in the short term. That's not a long-term thing, but it is helpful in the short term. What we're gonna do is try to clear these trees real quick and maybe move it up here. How about that? I mean, I'd really just like to have it where our current iron situation is, but I do not care to delete and rebuild that in this moment. Although, that's nice. That is nice. Could we do... No, we're forcing it. Well, okay, but here's the thing. What if we did it like this? Hear me out. Let's pause. I want to move all of this back, but this doesn't have to stick out like this. We actually don't need access to this at all. It's not something that trucks have to come to. It just makes oxygen out of the air. So it's actually totally fine if it were back a little ways, right? And the water input could simply go here, right? That way, it's still up against the road, right? I think that's what we're gonna do. Okay, cool. It is decided. It is decided. Let's make some quick adjustments then. Obviously, should have brought his smokestack over. So the nitrogen is still sorted. Oxygen, we aren't going to need trucks to come back here, so that's fine. Oxygen goes, is it here? I think that's right. That's what it was. And then comes over here. Yep. Okay. I'm wondering, do I want, I think just for the sake of it, to bring this over as well? Yeah, let's place it here. That's fine. It won't be symmetrical, and I will live with that. I think we'll just go down to one water input, which means this can go, and this can go, but has to connect back up over here. A question, how much water? It's like 6, right? Okay, good. So a single bottom level pipe is not a concern. I actually think we'll just keep these both above. Looks cleaner. Okay. And then, of course, oxygen. The other alternative we could do would be, instead of a second air separator, we could just, when we get to building the second half of this, whenever that is, we could unity boost this one. We'd have to upgrade all the piping and exhaust accordingly, but if this lack of symmetry bothers us, it's an option. Okay, and then water. We do need to bring water up. Let's just call it here, meaning that we can kill this pipe segment and this pipe segment. Okay, with these changes, remind me, where's the road that we've been using? It's these 2 tiles, so now I do need to move all of that back. Ah, this doesn't work at all, does it? It does. I compromised slightly on having a second output here. I don't think I care. I think we're good. Neat. Love it. And in fact, one last tiny adjustment, just visually, going to move this like so. Cool. This vehicle depot looks tight now. We will probably, we're going to upgrade it to a vehicle depot 2 eventually, which is going to require a whole new setup anyway, so I don't mind that being a little squished for now. But I think this is it. I think this works. So let's get it going. All right, in order to build it, we will need, because we're not going to do this all from the very beginning, as we said, we're just going to do a small part of it first. Let's do all of our inputs and outputs naturally. let's get, this is what? This is a slag. And remember, that little guy got me before, huh? Let's do 2 right from the start. I think we've been so far behind on iron for far too long. I think we want to feel the luxury of being overflowing with parts as quickly as we can to make up for it. Oh, this pipe actually, right, needs to go the other direction. This is to continue water out this way. Right? Okay, great. Which also means that we don't need to build it yet. Cool. But obviously oxygen does have to happen. And a handful of belts here. And I think this should be good. Cool. Inevitably, something's broken. Let's find out. Let me know if this is empty. And let me know if this is empty. Call this like a 7. I'm starting to do import priority 7 for like basic goods manufacturing stuff. Trying to start to come up with like a heuristic for what priorities, like what things go on which priority. And then, oh no, that's interesting. We are rather low on copper. That's actually quite a problem. Okay, so what's going on there? You don't have any trucks? You're all here. Why are you full on sand? Yeah, so this is, I suppose, the problem of splitting the source order between these two. I would really like if I could assign these trucks rather than to the mine tower, but to the excavator. Then I wouldn't have to worry about this, but we do have to worry about this. Oh no, not enough workers. Ah. All right, so we need to unpause that because we have no more space and no more people. I'm going to use our trick, unloading the crew, right? We have no more space, we can go anyway. But we are probably gonna wanna put that beacon back on and prioritize this urgently. Yeah, that's fine. I think what we need to do over here is stop trying to be cute and get a proper separate copper mining setup with its own mine tower. Is that right? Or do we just need its own mine tower? We probably don't need a second one of these. We just need another one of these, now that I think about it. Right? Okay, yeah, hear me out. This better than housing, or like not quite as urgent as housing, but let's say that 2 of these and 4 of these come off here. This one will only be for sand going forward. Like so. Now, which one stayed? You, of course, it's not the one I wanted it to be. But you are here? No, it's you. You are now actually going to be our sand guy. And this will be our copper guy. Now these can still, they're coordinating separately, so they won't be overlapping anymore. What this solves is the trucks that we wanted to support our copper excavators were allocated across everybody. And because our sand trucks were getting backed up because we're not using sand, those trucks are intended to be copper trucks were getting pulled into that sand backup loop. And so we need to separate those out, but we can use the same ore sorter We just need to have a different mind control tower for it. Of course, concern here is going to be we don't have any dang parts. Let's prioritize this way. And let that run for a minute. We'll also, now that we make these, move this up and this up. Okay. Power's running well though. This is very nice to have. What you'll see is, and I'm not going to delete these, right? These are not running at all. I told you diesel generators only, they work on sort of a pull rather than a push. If there is unmet electrical need, they will kick in. But until then, they're not going to do anything. As a result, I actually like to keep them around as emergency backup, right? So in case we ever do anything stupid and take this offline, we'll still have some amount already built, which is hopefully never going to come up, but you never know. I keep preaching flexibility and fail-safes in navigating this game. So there's no reason to delete it. We don't really need a handful of construction parts back. That is not our biggest concern right now. We are, however, low on people. And so until we have more people coming in, we'll keep building all of this, but I'm not going to have the machines run because we just can't staff it quite yet. This is full up though now, or built rather. So the beacon should be kicking in, and we're kind of at a large enough like population size now that population growth is starting to help. Our health is doing okay because we're providing water and food, and we haven't yet really ramped up our pollution, but we'll get to that. Don't worry, we'll definitely pollute more. So we'll have to do things to offset that as well. Now, is this gone up yet? Great. Okay, so this is working. Great. Hang on now. You're supposed to be doing sand? All right, you know what we're gonna do? You're doing sand now. Hang on. I need to reset these. You need to stay on copper. You need to be on copper. You have copper, and so your sand trucks are not taking it from you? A truck should come over and service this, shouldn't it? I'm finding it weird that that's not happening. Well, whenever vehicles are being weird, recover it. Send it back, deal with it later. Hey, water recovery, that's nice. This is the cooling tower that I was mentioning. So, over here, hey, refugees, tremendous. We'll unpause now. We can totally staff everything. Great. All right, cooling tower. Input our steam, low pressure steam, and get 50% of it back. Like I said, we are making 48 of it, which will be a nice little 24 water back to us. I'm going to clear this out quickly, but because I really don't want to interrupt our power, I'm gonna instantly Unity build it, and then we'll place this, sure, here, right? And bring the pipe here, and this pipe. Again, we're gonna potentially be adding buildings here. So up and over, and if we have to adjust it, eventually we will, but that's fine. Input this water here. And again, we want to prioritize the recycled water, not just because it's a better use of, it's cost avoidance of draining our reservoir over here. But because we've set it up now so that if we don't run the water through here, this will back up and then we won't be able to generate power. So doubly important. Oh, I have made a huge mistake. This requires construction parts 3, which we don't make yet. Yeah, that one's on me. So in the longer run, we said, hey, it's very cool that we'll just be able to copy paste this, set it up here, and voila, we have a construction parts 3 module, right? And hey, that's still true, but yeah, I didn't build it yet. So we're gonna need to do that real quick. Let's see. In the future, 3s turn into 4s. But I think what we'll do, the other problem is that this requires steel, right? Steel is the additional ingredient to make 3s. Well, good news, we are hopefully finally making some of that. The oxygen is still, oh my, is still an issue there. I think we're gonna prioritize 2s again to make sure that that happens quickly. But the issue is this is not yet made. All right, that's fine. We're gonna get there. The problem that I've just created unnecessarily is that we can't dispose of this now, which is gonna back up. So we're gonna do this. We are going to create a, maybe it's a best practice we should have done from the first place. Anywhere that there's a potential catastrophic backup, essentially. It's really not a bad idea to have something in case of emergency still. So if, can we keep this here? No? Why is this not, oh right. These balancers hate connecting directly to anything, really, frankly. We're going to prioritize the recycling output. But until we're able to do that as backup, we're still just gonna vent it. So, all right. Whoopsie, that's fine. What I would like to do, yeah, see, it's already mad, but it's already being taken care of. What I'd like to do here, we're gonna need steel to come in around the back, like we have electronics coming in around the back here. But I'd like to be using steel here instead of iron as well. So it would be really nice if we could have, for example, this belt run along this way and then join up here. Let's do it like this. Keep it on the ground as long as we can, but that connects up there. That said, that won't work quite yet because the whole reason we got construction 3 in the first place is, let's do settlement power, why not? The reason that we had to get construction 3 is that in order to do the thing that I've been talking about this entire time, which is replace iron with steel, if we look at those recipes, certainly for construction parts we can do it, and for mechanical parts we can do it, but they all require this assembly 3 instead of our assembly 2. You can make it in anything that's 3 and up, but we don't have any assembly 3s yet. And so if I were to turn this into steel right now, I would have to upgrade all of these to assembly 3s in order for them to be able to handle the recipes that we want. We're not there quite yet either. We're going to need, as you can see, 25 construction part 3s per one of these to upgrade. The good news is it'll also increase the production rate. So this whole thing will get turned into 3s in relatively short order, but we have to be producing them. Catch 22, unless temporarily we allow this building to be basically like our old school temporary setups over here. Just making a handful until we are capable of upgrading. The other thing we could do would be to temporarily add a steel storage here, run it in like this. I'm not in that much of a rush. I think we're going to avoid that rework and simply bring them in like this. Make this be our just blueprinted eventually. Construction parts 3. And we'll bring this along like this. Our trucks can still reach this single machine. They can reach across one belt, which is good. Okay. Letting that run. We're still holding up all right over here. And we are definitely keeping up with continuous research, which is awesome. We've been cruising through. I already let it go idle for a minute, right? So that's great news. I think the other thing we might do, we're actually fine on vehicle, on our truck network. So I think we're gonna let that go. And how did copper balance out? Did copper balance out? It's starting to. It's starting to. We're doing all right over here. Yeah, so see now, because we only have our sand excavator and pickups assigned to this separate mine control tower, the folks over here working on copper are no longer being sort of pulled into it when this backs up, but we're able to keep the same ore sorting plant, which is good because this cost 80 construction parts, not to mention all the storages that we've set up around it, whereas this only costs 20, and it's the exact same vehicles. So that ended up being less of a concern than it could have been. Low on electronics because we're low on copper, because we're backing up. I know we don't quite have the ore for it yet, but let's just crank this up a little bit. That also, unfortunately, means we have to do this exhaust. Yeah, it's very silly. No, we don't. No, we don't. We're good. All right, never mind. I thought that was... Yeah, we're only making less than 60, so good. Okay. Well, steel is up and running. That's tremendous. We have it up, running. We are not quite where we want to be on iron ore. So I think we'll probably, because these are working, right? I mean, these guys are going. I think that just means we need another excavator. And best practices is 2 pickups. Great. Well, look, I think we're going to call that an episode for now. That is a great start. We have gotten power up and running in a much more sustainable way. Our diesel consumption is going to thank us. I think we have still a fine coal supply. We're going to keep an eye on it. This is red and descending, but it's a big number, so we might be all right. And we have steel, just like that. Just like that. We need to reinforce. We need to get our excavator going, but that's fantastic. That is a great start to the mid-game. I'll do one last thing while we let that catch up, because it'd be nice to see that be full. We also have unlocked settlement power. Like I said, there's a bunch of stuff that you can provide to your people in order to create unity, right? This is why we are giving them their food, their water, dealing with their waste, giving them vitamins. Well, hey, look, one of the other things that people want is electricity. We now have quite a bit of extra electricity. Let's give them a transformer. So these don't have to be connected to anything. They are super easy. So we're just gonna slap one down here and we'll get it built. That will also give unity to our population. Got to get this copper going. My goodness. All right, that's fine. seeing green in the bottom of the bucket. I'm seeing it fill back up. We just need to rebuild our buffer, and that is fine. I would really like, and we're not that far away, but I would really like a better high volume, long distance transit ability for our raw resources. If only such a thing existed in the tech tree in the short to medium term. Something to keep an eye on. I think that's going to do it for now, though. So, between episodes, as we did last time, I think that was helpful, I will let buffers recharge a little bit, but I won't make any real progress. I want to make sure that everyone gets a chance to see the important stuff. And hey, that's the beginning of Construction Parts 3. So I will only advance things to make the activity a little bit more continuous so that there's less sitting around and waiting on screen. Hopefully that format works. This looks like another shorter, more compact video as well as I glance at the recording time, so happy to see that. But let me know, as always, if there's if this is working, if there's anything you'd like to see differently. Of course, leave a comment, let us know. But until then, as always, thanks for joining, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.